Okay, so we have seen this example in the last video wherein we saw how we can use the try, throw and the catch block. Now if you notice here, for a single try block we have a single catch block. Now the question is, can we have multiple catch block for the same try block? That means, can we have one try block and have multiple catch block? Now you may ask why that is required. Now in this example it's very simple because there is only one scenario which can cause exception, and for that scenario we are actually catching it. Now can there be a scenario where inside the try block you can have different kinds of exceptions, and for each of those exceptions we need to use another catch block, and associated with every catch there would be a throw? Well, that is possible. So you can have multiple catch blocks for only one try block. Now let's see what exactly that means and how you can actually do it. So what are multiple catch blocks? They are single try block can have multiple catch blocks. For multiple catch blocks, multiple throw statements should be present in the try block. So what happens is, there could be a scenario where an integer is causing an exception, or a double is causing an exception, or for example a character may cause an exception in the same code inside the same statements. So you put all those three statements into a try block, and for corresponding each of those exceptions we have different throws. So one throw would probably throw an integer, another throw would throw a double or a float, and the third one would throw a character. So for each of those throws we need to implement a separate catch block. So that's what it means. So you're basically trying to handle different kinds of exception which may occur inside one try block, but it is being handled by separate blocks of code in the catch block. So what happens is, as soon as the exception occurs, right, the compiler searches for a matching catch block. So if you have a throw which is throwing an integer, the compiler will look for a catch block which is basically catching an integer, and if it finds it, it will take the control back to that block. Otherwise the program will terminate. Right, so it's very simple. So let's look at the same example, and this time we're going to change the code a little bit, and let's see. Now this is an exception here. In the previous example, when you saw that was an exception which would cause an error or termination of a program. But in this example there is no error or termination of a program that can happen, but the exceptions are our own. For example, we don't want the value 5, or we don't want the value C, right? So this is a kind of a exception which can happen in business logic. These are business logic exceptions. Like if you recall my first video on exception handling, I told you that there are two kinds of exceptions. One which we saw the example in the previous slide, that when you divide anything by 0 then there is an issue. So that's not a business logic exception, but that's an exception which is well known, which the system cannot handle and it will crash. But in this case the system actually does not crash, but it can give you wrong results if you enter a value which is not wanted. So look at this. So here I have a double and I have a char. So basically I'm trying to generate two kinds of exceptions. So I'm entering the value for x and c, which is a double and a char. Now inside my try block I have written a code wherein I don't want the value for a double to be 5 or the character to be a. Other than this, if any value is entered, no exceptions will be thrown. However, if the value of x is entered as 5 or the value of c is entered as a, we need to throw this as an exception. We don't want these values in the code. So in the first line, if you see, if x is equal to 5, throw the x. That means we're throwing a double here. Else, if c is equal to a, throw c. Right. So there are two different kinds of exceptions here which is going to basically need to be handled. So in one try block, that is this one, we have one throw which is throwing a double and the other throw which is throwing a character. So for this throw we need a catch. So here is a catch block which is catching a double, right? And what we're doing, we are just printing out the value of that x which is being entered as an exception. So second, for this case, when you have throw c here, the c is nothing but a character, so you need to have a catch block which is going to catch a character and handle it. So if this block was not present, right, imagine that this block was not present and we run this code and this exception happens. That means if C is equal to A, then what the compiler will do is when it sees that okay, we are trying to throw C here because the value entered was A, it will start looking for this block, and if this block is not found, then the program will terminate. That means we have not handled that exception. All right. So this is the way by which you can write multiple catch blocks for a single try block. Now sometimes it becomes too difficult to manage all the different catch blocks, and we actually don't need to handle them specifically. So for example, if I just want to print saying that for any kind of exception which is this exception or this exception, if I just wanted to give a common message, for example, the value entered is incorrect, right? So it doesn't matter whether you have an integer or a character or a string or anything for that matter. If I just want to have a generic common message for all the exceptions, then there is no point in writing catch blocks for all the different throws. So can I have a single catch block by which you can have a generic exception handling, or you can just handle that exception in a very generic way? That means just send a message to the user. There is no need to pass these values. Just throw a message saying that there is something wrong, we will get back to you, or the value that you entered is incorrect, kindly go and look into it. So we can do that. So how do we do that? So there is a way by which you can catch multiple exceptions, right? Now for different types of exceptions, we can declare only one catch exception. All the throw statements will transfer the control to one catch block. So basically, if you have 5 throws, they will all go and enter one catch block. Now this is useful because sometimes we will not be able to figure out or which catch block or which line of code is throwing an exception or when things happen. So you have multiple throws, but you have to implement all the catch blocks for those multiple throws. But rather than doing it, we can just have one and put a general message and come across. So how do we do it? The answer is very simple. You just have to define one catch block and you have to put 3 dots here. Now that's a syntax. So 3 dots here is a syntax. So if you look at the code here, we have a main method, right, in which I have a single try block, and in that try block I have two exceptions, one similar to the previous one where one is a double and the other one is a character. Now what is happening here is, if you look at this, I have 2 throws, so I should have 2 catch blocks. However, what I have here is a single catch block. I don't have 2 catch block for this and this. I have a single catch block, and in this catch block I have put these 3 dots. So no matter which exception is thrown, right, each of these throws will always take the control to a single catch block. So this is how you can catch multiple exceptions with a single catch block. So this is all that we're going to do in this video, and in the next video we're going to see how we can rethrow an exception. Now that would be probably the last part of this chapter, and this last part of this chapter on exception handling. It's a small chapter, right? So in the third part or the next part of the video we will complete this chapter. So till then, go through everything that I have taught you today and in yesterday's video, and if you have any doubts you can always ask me or always ask during the class. See you then. Bye.